Wake up, Twins territory, and welcome to another edition of Twins Hangouts. I'm Jeremy Nygaard, or whatever you want to call me, joined live with Seth Stows and our special guest of the evening, Twins relief pitcher AJ Ochter. Guys, how you doing tonight?
Doing good,
Doing
doing
wonderful.
good.
So
What
we
we're
should
going to
probably
do
jump
is
right into this, huh?
what?
We should probably jump right into this.
That's what I was going to do. I was going to say, Seth, now you do all the talking because that's what you do, and ask all the questions you want. Get them out of the way.
All right, I can do that. All right, so we got to start at the beginning, which of course isn't the beginning, but it's the beginning of the story that probably has been your dream forever. AJ, I got to ask, how did you find out? Obviously, I think the night before, or maybe that night, you guys in Rochester, your season essentially ended. But then you find out. What was it like when the manager, I assume Gene Glynn, told you and I think 6 or 7 others that you were heading to the big leagues?
It was before we left Rochester. The last 2 games of the year we were in Pawtucket. Before we left, Gene told six, like you said, about 6 or 7 of us to be packed and ready to go to the big leagues in case we didn't make the playoffs. So at that point, I knew it was going to happen, but we still had a couple games to go in Rochester, and we had to stay focused with that. But once we lost Sunday night to Pawtucket, we knew we were eliminated, and they told us for sure. And talk about a lot of emotions and a lot of thoughts going through your head at that time. So it was a pretty special moment. I didn't even get a chance to tell my parents right away because our game got over at about 11:30 midnight with some rain. So I didn't get the chance to call them until the next day. But it was a good experience.
So, I mean, I know for you, you've got this huge support group, and we saw that, written about when you were in Detroit, and I think when you were in Cleveland, you had a lot of family, a lot of friends there. I imagine that phone call to your parents had to be, pretty emotional, pretty special.
Absolutely. I've said this several times throughout this whole process. This journey hasn't been just about me. It's been about so many other people who sacrificed so much for me to get to where I am. Parents taking me to games, grandparents taking me to games, me being away from family for so many years playing college and professionally. So this isn't just about me, and it's been an unbelievable journey to share it with people. And pretty fortunate that we got to play close to home. And the 3 road series I went on were Chicago, Cleveland, and Detroit, which are all very easily drivable from just outside Toledo. So it was it's a blessing.
I want to ask, then you get to the stadium for your first game. What's the adrenaline, or what are you feeling as you're entering the stadium, and then as you're entering the clubhouse, and then ultimately onto the field for that first game?
To be honest with you, the first couple of days it was pretty much don't make a fool of yourself. Just kind of try to blend in. Kind of try to watch the older guys. Try to watch how they go about their business. Try to pick the brains of some of the guys that to get a feel, what time stretch is and all that stuff. But, to be honest with you, it's just just try to fit in and, feel like you belong. Obviously when we first got there, we went and met all the coaching staff, and I've met them before, but, just to say hi to them again. And then, to be honest with you, once you're back on the field, it's all kind of just, just like anything we've ever done as a ball player our entire life. Obviously the first outing was special, but, it's still the game of baseball, and, it's a bunch of guys spending a lot of time together that enjoy each other's company.
But so first question is, did you have to carry the backpack?
Yes, I had the rookie bullpen bag, which includes certain candies and favorite guys' candies and Red Bulls and ibuprofen and all that good stuff. So yeah, that was and this year it was just a red North Face bag, so it wasn't anything a big pink backpack or anything. I think we were playing the Tigers, and they had a pink backpack, that said rookie bag or something like that on it. So we're pretty lucky. I was pretty lucky this year to only have a red North Face bag.
It doesn't sound so bad. For those that are listening and aren't listening live, that's the voice of Twins relief pitcher AJ Ochter. We're talking about his first major league call-up and what it was like, that experience. You said that it was kind of the game. It was just baseball once you got on the field, but I can't imagine when you came out of the bullpen for that major league debut, it had to have been a little bit different for that experience. So, I mean, what do you remember any of your emotions or your sensations? How nervous were you? And then obviously you had a good inning. So, just kind of react to your first outing out there.
I think the hardest part was waiting for, the call to tell you that you're in. We got up there. They just started a 6-team homestand, so bullpen was fresh. We had 12 guys out there, so you just never knew when you were going to throw. So every time the phone rang, you got your heart racing a little bit, not knowing exactly who it was going to be. But that I think we were up 11-4, and I got the call down, and Bobby said my name, and I don't think my heart has ever raced so fast as right there. Like I said, once I got out on the mound, things felt a lot back to normal. And as far as the game, I was thrown to Pinto, a guy who I was familiar with from Rochester almost all year and the year before. And then I faced 3 guys who I had faced in AAA over the last 2 years. Played with one in the Arizona Fall League, and Marcus Simeon, and Josh Fegley, who was the first hitter I faced, was the catcher in the AAA All-Star game with me this year. So they were guys I were familiar with, and I think that really helped a lot. And knowing we had a 7-run lead at the time, that I could just go after guys and attack with my best stuff was made things a lot easier. And it was a perfect inning. I couldn't have asked for anything more. Like I said, a strikeout would have been nice, but I'm not going to complain too much about my debut. It was all I could have ever dreamed for.
And given that Fegley is a Hoosier and you being a Spartan, I mean, that probably has a little extra motivation, right?
That's something that definitely goes back to our college days. I knew he was a heck of a player when we played against him at Indiana, and faced him a couple times, obviously. But you never dreamed that you'd be facing your first big league hitter would be a fellow Big Ten guy, and he's a great guy. And it's kind of cool to get to meet him over the years, and that kind of relationship is fun to build, and that's what this game does. It's pretty cool.
As long as we're talking Big Ten, Seth, I'm going to ask just a couple questions now. I did want to point out AJ is on. He's got his camera on. So when he was pitching for the Twins, he didn't have the full beard, and now he's sporting a full beard, which is way better than any beard that I could ever grow. So
and I'm sporting Chaska Town Course golf hat that I got playing up there. So I got the whole Minnesota thing going. So.
Yeah. So I mean, if I had a vote, I'd say rock the full beard all the time. But
yeah, I would. In the minors, we're not allowed to grow, and we have to be clean shaven. So once I got up there, I was able to let my beard grow a little bit. It was nice.
That's fantastic. I mean, there should be no rules against facial hair. My question though is kind of Big Ten related. Obviously, the story of you making your journey through the minor leagues, when the odds are stacked against most players anyway. But you being a 46th round draft pick, a round that doesn't even exist anymore, and I follow the draft pretty closely, and a lot of guys that are signed, I don't know if it's after round 30 or whenever, a lot of those guys just don't ever sign. So when there's a college guy with college eligibility left,
sorry.
Say that again.
No, we're back. Sorry, I lost you guys for a second. We're good
okay.
Now.
So I was just kind of telling you, or telling the listeners, kind of the story, the background of you being a college kid, getting drafted 46th round, with college eligibility left. A lot of guys don't sign. I think I had read, if you return, you'll be the top guy in their rotation. Back at Michigan State, what was the whole process of going through and trying to decide, am I going back to East Lansing? Am I going to sign a professional contract? How did that whole process play out?
I think that first of all, the support of my parents and the staff at Michigan State was huge in my decision. I went out to the Cape. I knew I was going to play out there pretty much regardless of where I was drafted because I didn't think I'd be drafted high enough where I wanted to. And I think part of the reason why I fell in the draft was because I wasn't afraid to tell the scouts how much I love Michigan State and how I wasn't afraid to go back there, and I really wasn't. But the decision came down to legitimately we won the Cape League championship on 2 days before the deadline, and I got in a car and drove home right from Yarmouth, went right home and sat down with my parents and we hashed things out, what the pros and cons, and ultimately led that decision up to me. I don't know why I trusted my gut instinct to say to sign, at the time being a 46-round pick and having a year left at a great university, probably felt dumb to a lot of people, but I don't know why my gut told me to sign it. I'm thankfully it's worked out pretty darn good.
Yeah, I mean it's a fantastic story, and it's great that you could share it with us.
All right, I got a few more. So, I mean, was there obviously you had a bunch of good outings and maybe one that you could love to have back, but I mean that's part of the big league life is you're going to have those type. Did you learn anything about yourself or your stuff, physical or mental, through that month in the big leagues?
I just think if anything, just the confidence that I can pitch at that level. Obviously, having some success in AAA, it's in AA, it's close, but until you get in there and the thing is I got to pitch in meaningful games against big time lineups facing the White Sox, the Angels, the Indians, the Tigers, teams that were all pretty competitive throughout the year. So for me, I think it was just knowing, getting my feet wet, getting to learn hitters a little bit, working with the staff up there too, and some of the other players, and just knowing that my stuff can play up there, and just continue to work at what I've been doing, and hopefully build on the short time I had up there.
We heard so much late about how the bullpen was tiring. They worked a lot of innings due to a lot of short starts early. Casey Fien was lights out the first 4 months of the year. Dunsing was great through July. Obviously Perkins was struggled and was injured, and the bullpen had its struggles. It's almost like people forget when guys like you and Lester Oliveros get called up. You guys have worked since early March as well, so you guys are probably, pretty tired too. Where would you have considered yourself physically as you pitched in September relative to where you may have been in, say, June?
It's something I've told a lot of people when they ask me about that. Almost the same question is towards the end of the AAA season, I was pretty tired. I think I threw, the most innings in the minors I've ever thrown is out of the bullpen. Most appearances, career high in appearances, career high in innings out of the bullpen. So it was a long year, but to be honest with you, that call up gave me a little rejuvenation just all over. Just a lot of energy. I felt great. My arm felt great. Body was tired, but I got through it, and it's definitely a long year. I threw a lot of innings. A lot of guys did, but you still have to stick with your routine that you had all year to try to keep the body fresh as you can, especially winding down the last couple of weeks where it's easy to get lackadaisical.
Obviously, you've heard the news. The Twins let go of Ron Gardenhire and the coaching staff. In your short time in the big leagues as a player here the last month, but obviously in previous years or other times when you've had a chance to work with him, what are your overall thoughts of specifically Gardenhire and then as pitching coach Rick Anderson?
They're the only staff I've ever played for in the big leagues, but I couldn't have asked for any more out of them. For me being a low round pick, a guy that who's had to work for everything they give. I think they really respected me and gave me the time that I didn't think that they really would. They were awesome to me. I mean, Gardy is a guy who commands respect, but deservedly so. He needs it, and as a player, I couldn't have asked for anything more. As a manager, he was always very friendly, very complimentary of everything that I did and everyone else did. So it was sad to see him go. And as far as Andy, I think he's a guy who just in the short time he really helped me with some mechanical stuff, and I think he's a great baseball mind. And like I said, I couldn't have asked for anything more. I'm sad to see them go, but I'm sure they won't have any problem finding any work in the game. They're great baseball guys.
One guy that I think we've heard is going to get at least an interview, and I mean my personal opinion will end up on the coaching staff in some capacity, regardless, is Gene Glynn. What are your thoughts? I mean, you played for him for essentially a year and a half. What's amazing to me, he's bringing so many different players at different areas of their career, so many players going up and down, so he never really has a consistent roster. So to me, what he's done is pretty impressive. But in the day-to-day, in the interpersonal skills, things like that, tell us a little bit about Gene Glynn.
I think he's another guy who's, like I said, I've only played for a handful of guys, but Gene is one of the best if not the best baseball mind I've ever been around. He's one of he's probably my favorite guy to sit there and pick his brain. Certain stories he has from coaching in the big leagues or playing up through the minors. As far as a manager, he's just a guy who demands a lot out of his players. He really does. But as a player, you don't have a problem giving it to him because he's a guy who is very respectful, works his tail off, and absolutely loves his players. He would do absolutely anything for us. He's been an absolute pleasure to play for. It makes it fun coming to the field every day. I hope if he doesn't get the manager job, he in some capacity up there in the big leagues because he'd be a big asset to any team. And I think the evidence there in Rochester, 10 games over 500 the last 2 years when there were stretches where we lost 8 plus games in a row. And to be able to keep a team and to do what he's done the last couple of years has been, it's just a reflection of the way he is as a manager. Just a never die attitude. And I'll speak on behalf of everyone that's ever played for him. I think he's an amazing guy, a great manager, but even a better person.
Jeremy, I've got 3 questions left, but if you wanted to throw 1 or 2 in here, go ahead.
I guess as you asked AJ about the managers that he's played for. I mean, you can. There might not be anybody that jumps to your mind, but I was just looking at your minor leagues. You came through. You played in Beloit and Fort Myers in 2012, New Britain and Rochester in 2013, New Britain for a week in Rochester in 2014. Are there any guys that you played with down there that jump out as guys that maybe are real close to figuring it out? Maybe guys that kind of fly under the radar. I guess I'd think pitchers, a name that's come up, and you wouldn't have played with him, but a guy that's come up this offseason is Cameron Boozer. Are there any pitchers that kind of stick out in your mind as guys that you just think that they're got some nasty stuff that just haven't maybe harnessed it that we could be hearing about soon?
I think one of the guys, and I'm kind of biased because he's one of my best friends, was my roommate, coming all the way through, but is Ryan O'Rourke. I mean, he's an older guy, but I think if you look at his numbers against lefties since he's moved to the pen, they've been absolutely outstanding. And I think he's a guy who kind of flies under the radar because he's not, a high, doesn't throw a lot of innings out of the bullpen, just kind of is a lefty-only guy, which is tough in the minors. But I think they turned him into that role a little more this year. And I think you can see how he flourished, especially against left-handed hitters. It's been fun to watch. Like I said, he's one of my best friends, and it's good to see he's got an absolutely devastating slider to left-handed hitters. And I'm hoping that he gets a shot to compete for some high-level jobs because he can get left-handed hitters out at a very high level.
Yeah, and that is a name that, I mean, if you're familiar with the minor leagues, it's a name that you've heard, but not a guy that really has risen up to the top, but a guy that he pitched once in Rochester this year, I think. So, yeah, definitely a name to keep an eye on, especially as a left-hander, like you mentioned.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was a big game he came in and pitched into. It was in a playoff race, second to last game of the year, and did a great job and got lefties and righties out that game.
Cool, thanks.
I remember seeing Ryan starting in Beloit and thinking, sitting right behind home plate for a couple of games, and he started. I saw that slider, and I thought he could almost immediately pitch in the big leagues as a left-hander. And that's the role they gave him this year because that slider is incredible. Plus, I think he has the personality, the intelligence, and the competitive fire that would thrive in that role.
Yeah, he's a high-energy guy, to put it mildly. He's ultra competitive. Absolutely wants the ball in any chance he can get, and like I said, I mean, his stuff, it speaks for itself when you watch it. I play catch with him a lot, and it's tough to catch, and I hope he gets a chance to show what he can do because he certainly has the talent to.
He was a hockey guy, right?
Yeah, he played hockey, and that definitely shows too.
He had left-hand. It shows that I'm looking at Baseball Reference that he had against left-handed batters. In 74 plate appearances, held batters to a OPS of 291, 114, 162, slugging percentage 129 slash line against left-handed batters. That's pretty filthy.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just, his slider is good, but he throws a hard sinking fastball that runs in on guys, and he's just a fun guy to watch compete out there. You guys can even if you see him in spring training, he's pretty fun to watch throw.
Definitely. Hey, the Arizona Fall League's starting today, and you had the opportunity to go there last year. What were you kind of thinking going into that, and what do you think you grabbed or grasped from that experience that really, I guess, kind of pushed you to the success you had this year?
Obviously going out there last year, I was trying to compete for a spot on the 40 man. That was my goal going in, and I threw really well my first 8 or 9 outings, and then the last couple kind of hit that wall out there. That's if it's an extra 6 weeks of baseball that you're not used to. But going in, I was just looking forward to competing against literally the best players in minor league baseball. It was an absolute blast to, even just to play with some of the guys I did with from the Twins that I had never gotten a chance to was a lot of fun. But guys from other teams, making friendships that'll last forever. Competing against the best players in baseball, guys like Chris Bryant, Addison Russell, that whole Cubs team that was out there was pretty impressive. So it's a lot of fun. Being out in the Phoenix area is about as good as it gets too. I wish the best of luck to the guys that are out there this year.
Speaking of fall, I know you played football at a very high level in Ohio, which is obviously great high school football. Growing up, I know your dad was drafted by the Vikings at one point and played some professionally. Was there ever any thought in your mind that you would consider going the football direction as opposed to baseball, or was there ever a push to do that?
I don't think I ever considered playing baseball past high school until it was after my junior year of high school. I was always set on, like I said, grew up in a football family. Still to this day, love football. I love watching it. Love going to games. So there was definitely thought. I got a ton of Division I letters my junior year, and it wasn't until after my junior year that offers started coming in for baseball that were pretty substantial from some pretty big schools that I realized that baseball was probably the way to go. But like I said, I still have a love for football, and I love the game of basketball too that I played in high school and had a chance to play at the next level. So it definitely wasn't an easy decision, but I'm glad it's all worked out pretty good.
So again, speaking of football now, last weekend you were at Michigan State at the football game, and they recognized you, which I watched the video that your girlfriend posted, and we just lost AJ again here. For those, I'm sure we'll get him back shortly. Um, Again, we're joined by AJ Ochter, the Twins relief pitcher. AJ, welcome back again.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry.
no, that's fine. I saw in the video your girlfriend posted of you being recognized at Michigan State at the football game. I don't know if it was between quarters or at halftime or what, but pretty nice recognition. Great response from what I could hear from the video from the crowd. And the best response, of course, came when they mentioned that your first major league win came against the Tigers. What was that day like? I saw the sign where you've got your name now with some pretty good names, including Kirk Gibson, who I know you met. There's some pretty impressive names on that list, and you get to join that. So what was that day and that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was an unbelievable day. It all kind of came to fruition last or 2 weeks ago in Detroit. I got my college coach tickets to come up, him and his son and his dad, and they were down on the field beforehand. And I said, hey, I'll be in town next week. I think I'm going to come up to the Nebraska game. He says, okay. He said, we'll be in touch. And then I texted him on Wednesday to see if there were recruits coming up or anything, because I don't have a problem going in and meeting those guys and talking to them. And then he said, well, he says, yeah, I'd like you to come talk to the guys, but also we're going to honor you after the first quarter during the game. And that was, that's pretty special. I've been to so many games at Michigan State in my life, and to be able to be down on the field and be recognized in front of 78,000 people was unbelievable. And before we went out there, Coach Foss says, "Man, I hope they don't mention you got your first win against the Tigers." But they made for some friendly boos. But even just walking back up in the stands afterwards, just to see the response from people was pretty special. And I mean, like I've said a million times, Michigan State's an unbelievable place. I'm very fortunate to be part of that university, and it was an awesome experience.
I got a little random Michigan State football trivia for you. Trey Waynes, the cornerback there.
Huh?
Do you know who he played in a backfield with in high school?
I do not.
Melvin Gordon of the Wisconsin Badgers.
Really?
Yeah, and they ran like a wing T type deal, And the two halfbacks were Melvin Gordon and another guy that played for the Badgers that got hurt, and Trey Waynes was the fullback on that team.
Geez, that would have been fun to stop. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
You couldn't. You would lose games by like 50, but then I think they ended up winning like state championship game after Gordon and Waynes graduated. The following year they were state champs, but not when they had those two guys together in the backfield. Kind of crazy. Yeah, a lot of speed.
Yeah.
All right, so we got the Wisconsin guy that and we're talking to a Michigan State guy, and we're talking football. And as a Minnesota Gopher guy, last I just be quiet at this point. So anyway, I guess the last one I have then is, have you had a chance? I mean, now that the season's been done here for a couple of weeks, to kind of look back at, on draft pick, the starter, move to the bowl, year, 2 years ago, you dominated the next year in the big leagues. Really,
It's been a crazy journey, and I think that getting back, nothing really sank in about playing in the big leagues till I really got home, and walking around town, and just going to grab food, and just people stopping me on the at the restaurant, saying congratulations, and certain stuff like that. It was a pretty special moment, and like I said earlier, it's a lot of people that have helped me along the way and sacrificed so much. So even back to my days playing Little League in Oregon, Ohio, just to think of those people and how far I've came since then, and the people that I played with then, it's just a pretty special thing, and it's one step to the journey that I hope I can continue to build on. So I'm happy with what's going on so far, but in no way am I satisfied. So I'm hoping to keep going.
AJ, I got one question for you. It comes from Scott Burlingame on Twitter. Wonders what your favorite baseball movie is.
Favorite baseball movie? I'm going to have to go Bull Durham. Pretty classic, and I think playing in the International League, getting to play the Durham Bulls, it's pretty cool to see the Bull up there. And like I said, the All-Star game was there this year. So probably Bull Durham. I think it's a pretty funny movie with Nuke and the catcher and everything. It's pretty good. So
I think that's also Seth's favorite baseball movie, and I think Seth, we lost. I don't know if you could hear him very well in that last question. I couldn't hardly hear him at all.
The basis of what he was trying to say, so I just shot my answer out like that. So
yeah, he's basically living in Canada, and I question him every time if they have still have dial-up internet or if they have real internet, because he'll go away and come back, and
yeah,
it's pretty spotty. So Seth may or may not be back here in the next couple of minutes, but I think he got all his questions in to you, and he usually does most of the talking. So I asked you about the draft. I follow the draft. Do you follow the draft very closely now that you're kind of out of it?
Yeah, it's a little tougher just because most of the time we're playing while it's going on. But obviously I still have a good relationship with a lot of guys. Well, not as much now, but the guys from Michigan State I do, so I try to follow the draft to see if they go. But it's always fun to see how the draft falls. There's always so many big names from college and high school ball out there, and it's an exciting time for them, and it's fun to see.
When your time at Michigan State overlapped with Wimmer's time at Ohio State, right? Now we have lost AJ too.
There we go.
All right. Did your time overlap with Wimmer's time when you were
at
Michigan State?
We were the same draft. Played all 3 years against each other at Michigan State and Ohio State. And I played against him a little actually growing up in summer ball. He's from Cincinnati. I'm from Toledo.
Right. So, I mean, obviously he's gone through some elbow stuff. Have you seen him? He was with New Britain when you were there for a week.
No,
early this year, right?
Chance to play with him in New Britain at all.
So you didn't play with him.
I actually did see him. He came to Cleveland when we played there to see me, and he's good buddies with Lester Oliveros. To see there and catch a game. So I think he's a guy who's been bitten by the injury bug, and I feel terrible because watching him throw in college, it was impressive to see what he could do, and I'm hoping that one day he can get back to where he was, because he was impressive, and he's even a better guy than he is a baseball player. So I wish him the best, and I know he'll work at it because he certainly does.
You know that bet that golfer that dad made about his kid winning the major tournament? You know, by the time he turned 20, whatever it was. Did you hear about that one?
Yep.
It's too bad that someone didn't bet on you making the major leagues as a 46th round pick before the first round pick.
Yeah.
That could have been a big time cash out.
Those odds probably weren't very good. I don't know anyone in their right mind that would have taken that.
Well, I mean, bet $5 on something that I mean you could that's big league money right there if you win that bet.
Yeah, that would have been a big payout.
Hey Seth, welcome back.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, well, we were talking about how you probably had to redial. Maybe someone called in and kicked you off the internet.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't get it.
So then we were just talking about other stuff. We talked about Wimmers a little bit because they played against each other in college. So, do you have any other questions that you wanted to ask, or should we let AJ get some sleep so he can get up and train tomorrow?
Yeah, since I said it'd be like 10 to 15 minutes and it's been like 33 already, we should probably let him go. But seriously, thank you very much. Obviously, it's been fun following you to this point, and I know that you got a long ways to go in your career, and certainly hopefully to see you next year in spring training, and hopefully next year just keeps getting better for you. So thanks again for joining us, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I always enjoy doing stuff like this. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks
All
a lot,
right,
AJ. On Wisconsin.
Party on. We'll see you guys.
See ya. All right, that was AJ Octor that was joining us tonight. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. AJ's a good guy. I had a chance to meet him in Beloit, I don't know if that 3 years ago, whatever it was. And he's always been real good about answering questions. Obviously, you don't want to put him in a position to answer or shouldn't need to answer, but he's pretty upfront about what's going on. And obviously, the story is tremendous. We'll see what happens next spring. And if he'll get another opportunity either out of the season or later in the season. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, it'll be interesting. It's been an interesting and exciting career, and obviously anyone that gets that major league debut, it's a pretty exciting thing. So I know for him and his family, that has to be such an incredible experience.
Are you trying to tell me that I shouldn't ask my question about who I thought impressed him? Is that what you're trying to say?
I don't know. That was a good question.
Okay.
No, that was good.
Because I can't see your face anymore since we don't do the video thing, and whenever I ask a question that you think is questionable, you give me a funny look.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as good at the eye roll as my daughter, but I think that's why we both are on non-video, because then when we say something dumb, we roll our eyes and we can't see it. So
right.
It keeps us from like punching the screen at each other or something.
Quick update: the Salt River Rafters, the Arizona affiliate that the Twins have all been assigned to, are playing their opener. They gave up 3 runs in the first. Buxton had an error. They called it a fielding error. He came up in the bottom of the first, took a walk, which was good to see. Ended up stealing second and scoring on a throwing error. Eddie Rosario got a hit in the second inning, and Buxton struck out swinging later in the second. So at this point, just the 2 of them that have played so far. Buxton 0 for 1 with a walk, stolen base run scored, and a strikeout. Rosario is 1 for 1, just 1 plate appearance. So that's the Arizona Fall League. I believe Salt River will play tomorrow afternoon. I mean, we'll see what happens. The guys usually don't play consecutive days a lot, but definitely something that's fun to watch as this fall progresses in the playoffs that Seth can't watch on cable progress as well.
That's right. And at Twins Daily today, I posted a quick update on which Twins minor leaguers will be going, and kind of gave a little bit of what they're trying to show potentially. And like you said, I mean, they're going to play 6 days a week pretty much for the next 6 or 7 weeks, playing at least half of the time for the most part. It'll be interesting to see. Each player that's there has kind of I'm assuming, a goal of what they want to accomplish in this period, and some of it's just getting at bats. Buxton missed a lot of at bats this year. Kepler missed a lot of time in the first half. Obviously, Rosario missed time with suspension, and he struggled too. And then for the pitchers, obviously a guy like Taylor Rogers is trying to impress in a starting rotation likely that has Archie Bradley and Mark Appel on it. And then Jason Adam trying to impress new teammates and the organization. Like AJ said, one of his goals last year was to play well enough to get added to the 40-man roster. Jason Adam is kind of in that situation too, I'm guessing. And, Zach Jones missed a lot of time, and it'll be interesting to see how they all play. But I do know that at Twins Daily, we're going to have a weekly update on what's going on in the Arizona Fall League. Steve Lean, who did some updates for us, minor league reports throughout last season, is going to write a weekly update on what's going on in the Arizona Fall League. And obviously you and I will talk about it, but we'll also try to get weekly updates from the Caribbean leagues, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, as well as the Australian Baseball League, which gets started later this off season. And I know a lot of the Twins players from Australia play in that. I know Todd Van Steensel's signed with the team he played for last year, and sometimes some of the lower level minor leaguers do head over there for a few weeks or a month or even for the whole season. So, I mean, it's not regular season.
Seth, did we lose you again? Seth, are you there? All right, I'm pretty sure we lost Seth. He totally cut out on me. He's still showing up in the conversation, but maybe an internet issue on my side or on his side, I guess. I'm not sure. But as we wait for Seth to get back in this call, let's talk a little bit about the managerial search that is underway. I made the projection last Monday night that the search would be over by this point. I truly believe that it would have been, but it sounds like the net that's being cast is a little bit wider than Seth is asking if I'm here. We may have just lost connection. The managerial search that is underway, and obviously the internal candidates, Minkiewicz, Molitor, have been interviewed. Gene Glynn, it sounds like he's been interviewed. It also appears, Seth, are you there? Are you back?
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Is it me or you?
I'm pretty sure it was you.
All right, I assumed as such. I'm sure I was rambly enough that if anyone heard it, that'd be great, but probably not.
Well, you said something about the season, and then it was like, that's not the end of a sentence. So I wasn't sure. But we moved on, and I started kind of talking about the managerial search. I admitted that I was wrong when I thought that it would be announced today. It sounds like what we can confirm, or that others have confirmed, Paul Molitor, according to Lavelli Neal, has had multiple interviews. Doug Minkiewicz has interviewed. Gene Glynn, it sounds like he's also interviewed. And now the outside candidates that we've heard, Chip Hale's received permission to interview. He's the A's third base coach. Is that correct?
Either that or bench coach, I think.
Is it Trey Lavallo?
Torey Lavallo?
Torey Lavallo. He's the Red Sox bench coach. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the Twins have received permission to interview him. And then is it John Russell, the bench coach for Baltimore, that is expected to be interviewed after the Orioles run? Is there any names that I omitted from what we know?
Those are the ones I think we know. The name that I think we all assume is going to at least interview in some way is, Terry Steinbach, but we haven't heard anything about that. So I'm not sure where that one stands.
do you think at this point that the favorite to get the job is someone in the organization or outside the organization?
I think all along the favorite's been inside the organization.
Okay, has your if you had to put a percent on it, has that changed in the last few days?
Not really. I mean, I think it's kind of a toss-up between Minkiewicz and Molitor. I think the key with Molitor is whether or not he wants to do it and is willing to put the time in. And I think he probably is, but I think you want to be sure that the guy's willing to do it. And if he doesn't, then I think the favorite becomes Minkiewicz. But the names that they're getting, I mean, Hale, Lavello, those guys haven't managed before, but they've been in and around the coaching game in the big leagues for a long time. And John Russell's been a manager in the big leagues with the Pirates, and he was obviously a coach in the Twins farm system, I believe from 2005 to 2000 or 1995 to 2002. So I mean, I guess I'm getting to that point now where it's like you kind of want a decision, and yet you want to make sure they're talking to all the available parties, trying to get as much input into this decision as they can. Gene Glenn deserves it. We talked a little bit about that with AJ. I think, Gene Glenn, if he were to get it, he wouldn't be the big name, but he'd be deserving, and he has certainly earned that opportunity. So I'm kind of to the point right now where whoever they do sign is going to be a good choice.
Right.
It's just people kind of have their favorites at this point. They're going to get a good baseball person who has earned this opportunity. And then I guess you kind of go from there because, we've talked about it. People think Paul Molitor, there's a group that believes Paul Molitor would be a great manager because he was a great player, and I think we both kind of disagree with that. Now, he might be a great manager because of other things, and I think he's got some of the qualities that you and I have talked about them looking for. But, so do some of the others. I guess what are your thoughts on having some sort of managerial experience, whether in the big leagues or in the minor league level? Obviously, Molitor doesn't have that, but he's coached and he's been a roving instructor. Minkiewicz only has 2 years, and that's at A-ball. These other guys have been bench coaches but never been quote-unquote the man. Where do you stand on managerial experience as a criteria?
I guess I over the last 10 days, I would say it's less important to me than I really expected it to be. I think, I guess my opinion would be I want a guy that's been on the road, that's traveled, that does the day-to-day stuff, which Molitor has done 1 year, right? I mean, 1 year recently.
Right.
But had Robin Ventura done it at all before he became the guy in Chicago?
Not at all.
At any level, at any capacity? And
nope.
I think part of it is can you juggle the things that you need to juggle? And some players do it really well. Like as a catcher, when you're meeting with the pitchers and you're doing these things, as a manager, you have to be able to juggle those things too. And I think the minor league stuff, it gets you ready for it. If you're a bench coach, a third base coach, I think it gets you ready for it. But I don't know that experience is really going to be like, oh, well, he's better because of it. It wouldn't be. I don't even know if I can make it a tiebreaker. I think you're going to learn stuff. I think the more important piece of that puzzle is, can you put a staff together? And if you don't have that experience with guys, have that rapport with people around the league that you could put a staff together, then I think it might become a problem. It might be an issue. But if Doug Minkiewicz gets hired as the manager and can put a good staff together, whether he's got major league experience or not, I think that'd be fine. If the Twins were to hire somebody that doesn't have any managing experience anywhere but could put a staff together, I think that's going to be the kind of the yardstick. Does that make sense?
No, I agree, and I don't know how you do that. That's a question mark in itself. If Doug Minkiewicz becomes the manager, let's just say, how much input will Terry Ryan have into his choices for the various coaching positions? If they did bring in someone like John Russell, who has a ton of experience and has been in multiple organizations, or Chip Hale, who has been in multiple organizations and in various roles, they have a lot of contacts, and may have a different opinion on who that would be, who might be good. I think part of that might actually be part of the equation is how much is Terry Ryan going to have a say in the coaching staff, and he probably has more control over that if he hires one of the internal guys.
Right. And I think I'm at the point where I'm wondering if Molitor gets offered the job, if he accepts the job, that he's going to be told a couple of guys that will be on the staff, including Doug Minkiewicz.
Well, I think if Minkiewicz isn't the manager, I think he's going to Chattanooga.
You don't think he'll be on the big league staff?
I obviously don't know, but my sense is that if he's not the manager, they'll keep him managing. I think we got to remember, if it were Molitor, he's already older than Gardenhire. He may be a 3 to 5 year stopgap type of thing, depending on how things are going. And I think at that point, you are probably grooming Minkiewicz. So maybe he manages Double-A for a couple of years, and then he gets a coaching job. I think the one given, I really do believe Gene Glenn's going to be on the big league roster as a coach in some capacity. If Minkiewicz is the manager, he might be the bench coach sitting right next to him.
Right.
He's had so much experience.
That'd be fine.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think that'd be good. Yep. Whereas if Molitor's the manager, I think Gene Glenn could become the third base coach, and they have someone else. Someone with a different, I guess, set of responsibilities. Whereas Glenn would kind of help mentor Minkiewicz, and maybe Molitor's in the same boat. But I don't know. At the end of the day, picking a coaching staff is really going to be interesting. The Minkiewicz to Chattanooga thing really comes from an interview he had with Patrick Royce last week. I believe it was last Wednesday, in which it sounds like he and Brad Stile have had some conversations about him not being with Fort Myers, and he started talking about the Southern League and where it travels to and things like that. So to me, it really sounds like Minkiewicz is going to Chattanooga if he doesn't get that job. Well, then what happens with Jeff Smith? Does he suddenly become a third base or first base coach or something in the big leagues? Or, there's just so many variables that play out to all of this. Who becomes the manager in Fort Myers? And my sense is we're going to have a lot to talk about. And when the Twins do make that managerial decision, it's going to be very interesting to see who the coaching staff is, and then how the trickle-down effect happens throughout the minor league coaching.
So I guess my opinion, and it's not worth much, is that if Minkiewicz moves up, Smith will be squeezed from the organization completely.
I think we've both heard that he's not exactly a well-liked by the player guy, but it really seems like the organization really likes him. When I say the organization, I mean the front office types.
Right.
But I don't know.
Right. I guess that's just my opinion. Do you think there's a possibility that Mauer goes back to Fort Myers?
I think that's possible. It's also possible that, if Gene Glenn's on the coaching staff, Smith or Mauer could go to Rochester too. All of these things would certainly be in play.
How about this for a name to fill a spot if you needed at Cedar Rapids? Tommy Watkins.
He was the manager of the team in Florida Instructional League, and I think that is a goal of his at some point, is to do the managing. So that would not surprise me at all. He is a good baseball guy. He's been around the game a long time. He has a real passion for it. The things we've talked about. And I think his interaction with people, you see the bubbly, the fun that they have, but he knows the game and he knows how to turn into what he would need to be as a manager too. So I think he's going that direction at some point.
So,
I would not be surprised if he's a manager next year.
are there any like former? It seems like former Twins players often become minor league guys. Are there guys that we're not talking about that we should be? Former Twins guys?
Well, I know like Jock Jones was a hitting coach until middle of this year when I think he resigned. So I don't know what's going on there, but I mean he's a name that maybe quote unquote blast from the past. Matthew LeCroy, I think he's the bullpen coach for the Nationals right now. He was a very successful manager in their minor league system for several years until this year when he moved to, or maybe it was last year, but he moved to the bullpen coaching job for the Washington Nationals. So there's another, possible name. There's some. Frank Viola. I think he moved up to Double A or Triple A with the Mets as their pitching coach. I think he certainly would be in play as a guy who has kind of put in his time. Not only was he a very good pitcher during his days with the Twins, but he has now been coaching and pitching for quite some time. That's maybe a name. Obviously, we're not talking about the manager job, but
Right.
as a pitching coach type.
Right, and he had some health issues though this year, correct?
He did. Was that this year or last year that he had the
this year.
like a bypass?
It was early this year, beginning of this year, right? With Las Vegas,
Okay.
was he with the Las Vegas affiliate?
Yeah, he might have been.
Yeah, I seem to think one name that's come up a lot, or that I've seen, and I don't know where the root of it is or the basis for it, was if Mankiewicz was hired as the manager, could Brad Radke be the pitching coach?
And I don't know where that comes from. He's never indicated any interest in doing that, and he's really done a good job. Some guys just want to play their career and then go home and be a dad. He's really done that. He's definitely done his part, and he's shown up for, Twins events that are important. But he has just kind of gotten away, and maybe he's ready to return. None of us would know that. We haven't ever been given any indication of that, but it's a name that, like you said, it keeps popping up, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I think probably because he was just a real savvy pitcher.
Right.
I mean, are there other guys like that might be? I'm trying to think of the other guys that were. He's the guy that sticks out because of who he was. Local guy. His ability to get more than what he really. His stats were always better than what he looked like he could offer, and if you can do that with guys, it's kind of a big deal. I guess the other thing that I wonder is, like Molitor's big thing is the base running, right? Defensive shifts. He kind of was that guy this year. Steinbach's the catching guy. What would Minkiewicz's? Obviously, if you're a manager, you probably don't handle anything specifically. But what's the specialty that he brings to a staff?
Well, there's a few things. He is known as a first baseman, but he did a lot of catching in college, and he played third base. He played a little second base even in the big leagues. So he could work with infielders, but he also, people forget about it because he kind of went up and down with batting average, but he was a guy that took a lot of walks. So he's just got a good sense for the game, I think, and obviously the thing that's going to get him the job if he gets it is his passion, is his competitiveness, and that kind of stuff. So, it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens there.
And now it sounds like the scouts come to Fort Myers Sunday. Organizational meetings start next Monday. Is that kind of
I believe so.
Somewhere around next Monday, they go for a week. But Terry Ryan's on record now saying that he doesn't anticipate a manager being hired for like 2 more weeks. So no staff in place at organizational meetings next week.
Right, and it's interesting because as much as we want a manager named, I think they're doing the right thing. I mean, they should talk to John Russell, and John Russell really probably shouldn't really talk to them until the Orioles are done. So I have no problem with them waiting. A lot of what happens at the organizational meetings is they will literally go player by player throughout the organization from, I don't know about DSL, but certainly the Gulf Coast League all the way to the big leagues, and they'll evaluate each one of them and give them some sort of a grade of what their upside is. They'll probably map out where players will play, who to make all these types of decisions. And as much as the manager would be nice to have there and be a part of that, I don't. I mean, those are decisions for a front office anyway, for the
Right.
scouting, pro scouts and stuff. So I think it's more important to talk to as many people as they can and get the right guy. And, I mean, Molitor might be that guy, but if he has any questions about whether or not he even wants to do it, to me that's a big risk, and I'd probably look to the next guy. So I mean, there's here. How about this? Here's an interesting one. Texas, the Rangers are also another team that's looking for a new manager.
Right.
What would happen if Mike Maddox did not get that job, and he decided, hey, I want to be a manager, and he was willing to come to the Twins and have Greg Maddox be his pitching coach? Greg Maddox has been a special assistant, really, to Mike Maddox as a special pitching coach with the Rangers. Maybe it'd be an interesting brother combination at the top for the Twins.
So is Mike Maddox considered a front runner? I guess he's not a name that I've even heard tied to that, but I guess I haven't been following it real close.
I haven't either, and I guess I haven't really heard whether or not he's even a candidate or if he's even interested or if he'd want to stay more just on the pitching side, but that would be kind of fun to talk about. Yeah, I thought of that when we talked about Radke because, of course, Radke was always compared to Maddox, and and then all Twins pitchers who came up throwing 92 or less with good control were compared to Radke. So, I don't know.
I'm checking some headlines here. Texas Rangers begin interview process with Mike Maddox.
Okay.
So the first two they talked to were Mike Maddox and their AAA manager. So the club is expected to lean towards up-and-coming manager prospects rather than candidates with significant managerial experience. It likely puts Ron Gardenhire on the outside of the managerial search. Maddox has expressed interest in speaking with Houston about its opening with Bo Porter. Obviously, they've hired AJ Hinch since then. So, Maddox could become a candidate in Milwaukee if Renicky is decided to let go. So, I mean, he's obviously a name that should be on the radar for, not necessarily for the Twins in this process, but just on the radar because he sounds like someone that could maybe get it. It looks like he's managed with the Phillies, the Dodgers, the Padres, the Mets, the Pirates, the Red Sox, the Mariners, the Expos, the Dodgers, the Astros, and now that's what he played for.
I was going to say, that's a lot of teams to manage.
Yeah, what does it say? Starts coaching career in Round Rock with the Astros, spent 6 seasons as the pitching coach for the Brewers, now the pitching coach for the Rangers. So yeah, you can't get much more outside than a guy that's never even had anything to do with the Minnesota Twins. But yeah, that would be quite the deal. Get the Maddox brothers in Minnesota.
Well, I mean, it's just, yeah, and we don't know who they're even talking to. We've heard a few names. Most likely, I bet they've actually made phone calls on some other guys that we haven't heard about,
Absolutely.
Or even just regular, generic conversations, like a phone call saying, hey, this is just me, I'm Terry Ryan, and thought I'd just call and gauge your interest in whether or not you might be interested, or, and maybe there's just some of those real high-level conversations just to feel things out, too.
Well, it sounds like Terry Ryan's been the one fielding a lot of phone calls.
And I
right?
think that's fair because I think we would both agree that as bad as the 4 years have been with 92 plus losses, it's not a bad situation to come into. You've got a still fairly new stadium. You've got a team that has a chance. I think, and certainly think we hope has more than bottomed out and starting on the way up. Again, if they can win even say 75 games next year, 78 would be wonderful. I mean, you're a huge success if you can do that. So you're going to be given a few years. I think it's a good scenario for a manager.
Absolutely. I mean, that's when you know that you have the guys available or coming up to shoot. Why wouldn't you want to have that? You know, you're going to be given a pass the first couple of years because of where this team's come from, and nobody's expecting them to compete for the World Series or really the playoffs. And you know that the guys coming up soon have a lot of potential. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm looking for a gig, why not start with that one? You know, the Cubs gig, if that came open, that would be one that people would want too because of what is potentially coming up in the future. Let's do some questions. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay, I'm going to start with trying
And
to
real
find the
quick, if
ones.
anyone is listening to this, go on Twitter and feel free to send us some last minute questions here or on the Twins Daily site.
Okay, so starting with the questions on Twitter, um, John Williams asks, "It's been 2 years now. Please give your thoughts on how the Span and Revere trades have worked out. If you had to grade them after 2 years, what are you grading them, Seth?"
I mean, at this point, I think you'd say C minus ish. If C was, say, a good even trade for both teams, or something where it was a pretty fair deal, neither team is. I don't think Revere's been okay and Span's been okay. Both were solid in batting average this year, and Span finally got that on base percentage up again this year. Revere actually hit a couple of home runs. But I think, looking back, I think the Twins would and still should do those trades. Obviously Worley didn't work out with the Twins, but I really like the direction of Trevor May. And I obviously still am high enough on Alex Meyer to say that that was the right thing to do. At that time when they were trading him, they weren't going to compete for a couple of years. So what those guys did over these last 2 years probably isn't in the overall equation. But at the same time, right now, obviously the advantage at a major league level has to go to the Phillies and to the
Nationals, absolutely.
Nationals, and the Nationals got in Span what they wanted in the sense that and we'll see how the game goes tonight. Obviously, I can't watch it, but Span was brought in to be kind of a final piece to a team with a strong rotation and a pretty good lineup, and he has done the job this year in helping them into the playoffs. And I guess we'll see how far that goes, but he's been, I think, what they wanted this year.
Right,
Last year, not so much.
right. Um, yeah, if I was the Nationals, there's no way I would, from their perspective, do that trade over.
Right.
From the Twins' perspective, I don't think I would do that trade over. I mean, I think that it tilts a little bit towards the Nationals at this point, because it's a no-brainer from their perspective. If you were going to get the center fielder, if you were going to get Denard Span for Alex Meyer, that's maybe a deal the Twins would at least think about. The Nats aren't doing that. The Phillies, on the other hand, if they could trade Ben Revere for Trevor May and Vance Worley right now, I think they would probably do it.
I would agree.
From
I would
the
agree, which again to me tells me that both were the good right deals
for the Twins,
for the Twins.
absolutely. I mean, just the way that I look at it, maybe Vance Worley wasn't handled correctly, probably wasn't. But I mean, after last year and spring training this year, the guy cleared waivers. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not like teams were thinking he's the next big thing. the fact that then the Twins gave him up for absolutely nothing,
Right, that's annoying.
that's a questionable move given his age and given what he's done in the past. But
Absolutely.
at the same time, Trevor May, his ceiling is maybe mid-rotation guy. If he has a year like Kyle Gibson had this past year, I think we're fine with that, just that part of the trade. And I think the Phillies, if they knew what Ben Revere was going to be, which is what Ben Revere is, which we all knew he was going to be, I don't think that's like,
Right.
oh man, we can't give that guy up for a mid-rotation starter. You take the mid-rotation starter.
Absolutely. And that's what the Twins were thinking at the time is, we've got some outfielders, and obviously it hasn't really panned out, but I think the general consensus among many was that Ben Revere is more of a fourth outfield type if he's on a good team, who can also be a solid starter and get a lot of singles, play decent, really good defense. But the Twins needed pitching, and they still need pitching, so I think you trade a solid hitter for what you believe will be a solid pitcher, and in that case, two solid pitchers in your belief for that. And I think it's a no-brainer. Has it panned out perfectly to this point? 2 years later, no, but I still think it's the right process and it's the right thinking.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, let's talk some Twins Daily questions here. We got this one from Nader79A. Other than Buxton, who piques your interest the most among the 6 other Twins at the Arizona Fall League? Also, who has the most to gain?
Well, I mean, for me, these are always tough ones because I like following all of them, and like I wrote today, I think they all have a unique, or somewhat unique situation and different people or reasons they want to impress. I think the big one for me is probably Eddie Rosario. I mean, I think he's a pretty safe bet to be added to the 40-man roster, but he has some repairing to do. Obviously for the suspension in the last time, but also for lack of production once he did get back to Double-A. I mean, I think he's just got a lot to kind of regain his prospect status. Would you
Did I
agree?
lose you again, Seth? Oh, I thought I lost you. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I mean, and then for me, Zach Jones, obviously last year something wasn't right on the mound for him with the fingers that proved to be kind of an aneurysm type of thing. It'll be interesting to see how he, after missing so much time this year, coming back throwing hard, how he is able to pitch this year in the Fall League.
Yep, that was the name that I would have said is the most intriguing to me because I think he's going to fit in the back end, and if he's throwing near 100, not that that's such a rare occurrence anymore, but he was closing in Fort Myers with him and Birdie, literally a phone call away from the major leagues to start the year next year. That could be pretty exciting. And I think he's got a little bit more.
Jake Reed too now.
Right now. Yeah, I forgot that Reed was going to be there too. Yeah, you know what? I asked if Jake Reed had a chance to, like, how the Twins do the relief thing and then they start guys. I asked if there was a chance that Jake Reed could be a starter, and the response I got was not after this summer. So
yeah, in other words, they want him up quick, right?
Yeah, and I mean I think that's a fair assessment of when you're that dominant, you're going to move fast. But at the same time, do you dabble? Do you say, geez, maybe he's just a guy that starters are more important? They did it with Duffy,
right.
And Duffy's been. I think I'm probably higher on Duffy than most, but you took it a guy that was so-so as a closer in college and slowly made that conversion. All of a sudden he starts figuring it out, and he's started at AAA a little bit this year, and he's a guy that you mix in him and Rogers, and you have a lot of guys with a ceiling that's not crazy high, but high enough that they should be in the conversation. I just don't feel like there's been a lot of those guys over the last 5 years.
Yep. But at the same time, if you've got Birdie and Jones and Reed to go along with Perkins and whether it's Dunsing or Thielbar or whoever it is in a bullpen, you can make it starter only need to go 6 innings a lot of times and be successful. And we've seen that in the playoffs so far this year. Obviously the guys that are the great starters, Kershaw, Wainwright, Verlander, haven't pitched great, and it's the teams with the best bullpens that are winning in the playoffs. And I mean, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Because there's always value. When I talked to Gary Lucas about Mason Malatakis this winter or this summer, he said, there was always the idea that he would probably become a reliever, but by working in various situations throughout a game and needing to work out of them, as a starter, gave him more opportunity to do that. It also helped him to improve 2 or 3 other pitches. So, maybe that delayed him 1 year in getting to the big leagues, and obviously his elbow concerns right now are a bigger concern. But is it worth it? I mean, I don't know the right answer to that, and I don't know that we've seen enough of a sample to find out what's the right thing or the wrong thing. They just started drafting these types here 2 years ago, and we're learning a lot,
Right.
but I don't know if we have any answers yet.
Right. The thing that I guess I'm seeing in the playoffs is the great starting pitching gives you a chance to win a game, but the atrocious bullpens are going to lose you games.
Right. That's a good
So,
point.
For 162 games, the starting pitching is probably more important. But in a 5-game series, you can't blow one. You need a bullpen.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let's roll through these questions quickly here. From Go Gonzo Journal, Dave St. Peter said that payroll won't go down significantly, but I just did a little exercise, and if no moves are made, reasonable non-tenders and arbitration raises, and if no moves are made except reasonable non-tenders and arbitration raises, payroll could fall to $75 million, $10 million lower than last year. That would place the Twins 29th in payroll behind the Rays. Tell me it's not going to happen. And if it doesn't, tell me Terry Ryan signed a competitive starter and didn't extend Hughes and Dozier after one good season. At least he waited until the end of the year. Suzuki only needed to play well for half the season.
Well, I mean, I'm always I don't consider myself an apologist, but I know people accuse me of that. I'm not worried about the salary and the payroll as much as I'm worried about them playing the right people. And if they're playing a lot of the right people next year, those guys are going to be making league minimum. But I'd rather they play than bring in some guy for $3 or $5 or $8 million to block those guys. I mean, I want those certain guys to play. Now, I'm also of the opinion on the pitching staff, and I think others may disagree with this. If you're not going to get Lester or Scherzer, and you're not going to get anyone that is coming off an injury that you can get for a little bit less, and there is some upside there, I don't see the value.
Masterson.
I'd love
Right.
Masterson. To me, that would be a good example of a guy that I think is worth the risk because he has been a good number 2, and has proven himself over time and is worth the risk. He's the one guy maybe I would target. But if you're just going to be looking at guys in that third tier, I'd rather they go with May and Meyer and even keep Malone around and give him the $3 million he might make next year. I'd rather go with those guys where at least there's some potential than the guys you know what you're going to get, but it's nothing exciting.
Right. Well, you can't non-tender Tommy Malone. Can you?
Yeah, I mean that's my opinion too. I mean, even if it is $3 million, I mean that's not going to be a big deal, and it's
Not
worth
for a
the
starting
risk.
pitcher.
Right, because clearly he's better than what we saw, and he was hurt when he was trying to pitch. So
Right.
I would definitely bring him back.
Yeah, that should be. I would question that move if they just cut ties with a guy that has a little bit of potential. He's had success, but I mean that's Vance Worley all over again.
Right, and I guess to go back to the question that was asked is about the payroll. I mean, I don't want it to sit there and go to the poll ads, but I don't want them to just spend money just to spend it and say they did either. I'd rather they find a more creative
Right.
way to spend it, but um, I want the right guys to play, and obviously that's my opinion on who the right guys are, and everyone's entitled to their own. But I mean, again, unless you're going to get Lester or Masterson or Scherzer, and I think two of those three are simply ridiculous, I'd go with the
Right.
young guys.
Yeah, another name that you see brought up is Brandon McCarthy, and I don't know that he. I mean, what does he offer? You're going to have to sign him to a multi-year deal, and that's the thing with Masterson. You might be able to get him for 1 year,
Right.
and or 2 years maybe, 1 year with an option, whatever the case is. McCarthy will probably take a little bit more than that, but that's the thing that I'm all for with this team. If you can find a guy that's south of 30, or maybe 30, and just give him a flyer for a year, and that has some potential. And Masterson's a guy that he's pitched in the Central. He knows what it's about. Just didn't have a good year, and it was the wrong time to not have a good year. But a guy that was talked about getting $80 million or whatever, he turned down. So there's definitely potential there, and that's a guy that I wouldn't mind seeing him target either. Let's move on to the next question.
Yep.
Twins seem to have placed several players in the AFL who have experienced injuries during the past season. Is that protocol for most teams in regards to their use of the AFL roster spots?
I think it's a combination of many things, but I think we've talked about earlier in the year a guy like Buxton who missed so much time and is an elite prospect. You want him to get those at bats somewhere, and he is the kind of guy that, of course, MLB is going to put on their list and say, absolutely, we want him there. Rosario missed time and is a prospect, and I think has. I don't know that it's protocol. I definitely don't
Right.
think it's protocol because these guys all went there last year. 4 of these guys went last year when they were just prospects. So I don't think so. I mean, but you look at, I mentioned Archie Bradley's on this rotation. He missed a lot of time this year with injury.
Right.
Mark Appel certainly could use the innings after his struggles in high A ball. He did better in double A, but it's an opportunity for guys. But then at the same time, there's also the aspect of these. They also need to fill rosters. So there's some kind of picking and choosing by MLB to determine, how to fill the roster appropriately too, and you need to fill certain positions. So it's a combination of many things. I think there's, like we've talked about, reasons that these guys. We thought Levi Michael made a lot of sense because of the time he missed. We thought Alex Wimmers made a lot of sense because of his changing in his role to the bullpen. So it's hard to gauge one reason why these rosters get filled the way they do.
Right. Now, I wonder, too, when you talked about the organizational meetings, if they talk about, where guys are going to go, do you think there's also the discussion about pitchers and how many innings they want those guys to pitch? Maybe it's just a case of they have these numbers hung on these guys. Look at a guy like Taijuan Walker who pitched today, and if they're thinking, we wanted him at 170 innings or whatever the case is, and time to name your guys or send your list to the Arizona Fall League rolls around, and certain spots aren't going to get there, even if they weren't injured or whatever the case might have been, that you send those guys to try to get to that point. I don't know if teams do that, but you'd think there's got to be some sort of idea that if we want guys to get more innings, this is one way to quite easily do it. And I mean, that's kind of what you said.
Well, the Twins did that with Alex Meyer last year. He missed the 2 months, and I'm sure they were happy to get him an extra, I don't know if it's 30 innings, 35 innings, 25 innings, whatever it is, but that helps them get to a year-end number that they can then add 20% to for the next year. So I think there's those reasons. There's several reasons, and that's definitely all part of it.
A couple things here just to mention. Jason Adams is in for the Salt River Rafters. He's given up 2 earned runs, 2 hits, and a walk, and retired 1 batter through a wild pitch. Also, Bryce Harper put one in the bay to tie the game. He's a freaking stud, and I wish he played for the Twins.
Sure.
But that's just me. It's never going to happen.
I also wish Mike Trout played for the Twins.
Yeah, wouldn't that be fun? They played together in the AFL, 2 years ago?
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Harper just crushed that ball.
Obviously, I
Just
can't
crushed
do
it.
that.
No, that's what I'm telling you. Okay, moving on to the next question, also from Lightfoot. He says, this is for you, General Manager Seth.
All right.
Would you trade away prospects for a big outfield name, Kemp, Stanton, Crawford, etc., or roll the dice with your potential future prospects at a lower cost, knowing they'll be up in a year or two and cost nearly $20 million less? I think I know the answer to this.
Well, I mean, Kemp has been hurt for so long. I mean, he's missed a lot of time.
Right.
Crawford's missed a lot of time. So unless the Dodgers are pretty much eating all of their contracts, which they won't because there's still multiple years left on both of them, I wouldn't give up a lot for him. Again, it has nothing to do with the money, but I don't know. Crawford just hasn't been healthy. Kemp certainly is a talent. He could play center for a long time, or left, or whatever it is. Stanton's, of course, is intriguing because of his youth and his extreme power, his right-handed power, and the fact that even target field isn't going to hold many in for him. He'd be intriguing. He's a guy I'd definitely give up some prospects for. I don't know if those prospects would be Sano and Buxton, and probably not Berrios, but pretty much anyone after that I'd give up a lot for Stanton.
Right. Of course, if you called the Marlins and said we want Buxton or we want Stanton, their response is probably going to be, you need to give us Buxton, Sano, and Berrios.
I would guess that would be true. I don't think that they would take any less than that. I'd also say that as much power as Stanton has, Sano's is right in that category. I mean, maybe not quite.
Absolutely.
Not quite as well. I wouldn't even hesitate to say that. It'd be very similar. And then you add Buxton and his overall game, and then an arm that you think has upside. I wouldn't do that. So
I wouldn't either.
Again, it's not being cheap. It's just thinking big picture.
Right. And there's the big picture is, for me, and I know it doesn't work this way, but if I'm going to spend $15 million less for 4 years, and then maybe spend $60 million more the next 2 years total, I'd be all right. Like if we're saying $90 million is the place that we should be, and spend $75 million while these guys are coming up and don't spend that, and then they're not going to bank it, but kind of bank it, so you can get that payroll up to 115 or 120 later. I'm not opposed to that, but I don't think that's how the pull heads work.
Well, it's not yet. At the same time, in 2010, when they thought they were just a couple of players away, they gave the okay to go up to 115 and then 120. Right. So it's not like they're afraid to spend. I think that's one of those fallacies that way too many people believe. If they have a chance to win, they're going to try. Right. And also, they went out and spent a lot of money last year. So it's the Polettes being cheap is not. To me, it's not even a real story anymore.
Well, they signed 2 guys. They didn't exactly go bonkers. They didn't exactly go Detroit Tigers on us.
Well, no, and I don't think any of us would expect them to. But it's not cheap to spend. I don't know, what was that, $80 million?
48 or 49 and 24.
Yeah.
73. Yeah, I don't know. They didn't go cheap when they gave Mauer his gigantic contract, but if their payroll is going to be $75 million.
Or Morneau, or Santana, or Hunter, or Radke. Goes on and on.
Right. Last question. As Kepler gets placed in the AFL again, is there any way you see the Twins not putting him on the 40-man roster again this year? Do do AFL results matter? IYO, in your opinion?
You answer that one first. I got my thoughts, but
At this point, I would say he's on the safer side of the 40-man bubble, because I don't think that this is an off season where a ton of guys will have to be put on. I also don't think, because of his situation, being that was added when he needed to be, would qualify for a fourth option year, and still has upside. But if the situation were to arise during the season, I think he could definitely be in jeopardy during the 2015 season, but I think this 2014 offseason he's still pretty safe.
yeah, in July I thought that he would come off, because he was again hurt. He was not playing well. He was really playing poorly. But I think his second half numbers really probably saved his roster spot. Unless he absolutely tanks in the Arizona Fall League, I think he's safe to stay on it. And I keep going back to this. Yes, I dropped him from, 8 or 9 in my prospect rankings at this time a year ago to, I think, 16 this year. But when you're 6'4" and 220 pounds and have the type of power he has, the type of sweet swing that he has, the speed that he has, I mean, he's the definition of raw prospect. And even though he's been in the organization since 2009, I mean, coming from Germany, he hasn't played as much baseball as normal 21-year-old like American kids or Dominican or Venezuelan. I expect him to struggle and take a little bit longer. But I think with his tools and his size and his speed, I think he's safe. Like I said, unless he just absolutely tanks.
Right. I don't even think he could absolutely tank in the Arizona Fall League and get taken off the roster. Not at this point.
Yeah, and I don't even know what I don't even know what I mean. Whether it's 0 for 75 or I don't know. I mean, it would take a lot, I think, for him to come off at this point.
Yeah, maybe if you went 0 for 75. That's all the questions we had. The one other thing, and I didn't read the article, and I know you linked to it. Unfortunate news about Caleb Thielbar's mom passing away. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, just a minute. I just think it's one of those things that really humanizes the game when you see the news that a player's parent died. I mean, these are the people that, at least for me, I mean, you grow to love the game because of your family in large part. And I know Caleb Thielbar's mom, Janet, is known well for being the starting shortstop on a pretty good high school baseball team, back in the mid-'70s. And obviously, she's a big part of what has made Caleb successful at college and in his comeback with the Twins through independent ball. I had a chance. She sent me a couple emails a few years ago, always very supportive, almost thanking me for, humanizing the player and realizing that it is a difficult game at the level that these guys play it at. And then this spring in Fort Myers, I went up and I started talking to this couple over by the minor league complex. And after a while, she said, "Are you Seth from Twins Daily?" And I kind of said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, I'm Janet Thielbar." And we talked, and her husband, and for probably 20 minutes there. And, man, she was just so supportive of what we're doing and supportive of us being the type that are giving recognition to guys that aren't always recognized, the guys that still get to the big leagues, the guys like Caleb Thielbar, the guys like Chris Colabello, A.J. Octor's in that category too, the lesser knowns, and really making it, these guys aren't perfect. The umps aren't perfect. The players aren't perfect. I mean, we just had some real good conversations, and again, it just, it's not something we do, but obviously when you've got that connection and you've talked to a person and realized the type of impact that she probably had on Caleb, no question about it. And I know it's tough, and obviously we wish the best for the Thielbar family. And just again a reminder that these guys are really good. They're working really hard, but they're just like you and I when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Right. Absolutely. Um, let's call it an evening, 90 minutes in. Special thanks to AJ Octor, who joined us for the first half hour, fielded all sorts of questions. Um,
That was fun, eh?
yeah. Um, maybe we can get another guest for next week. No pressure.
Well, I think we've got a few options, and if there's anyone listening to this that has any ideas for people you'd like us to try to talk to, let us know, and we'll, in fact, put them in the comments. If you're listening this far in, you might even put them in the comments and let us know who you'd like us to try to talk to, because you just never know. We might be able to.
Seth makes everything happen. Let's not sell him short.
Actually, I think I've got someone from next week already, and we could actually have multiple too. So let's hope.
Ooh, like a foursome.
That's kind of weird.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with us on Tuesday night. We'll see you next week. So long, everybody.
Good night.